thank you very much for your kind introduction, and really an honor to be here. I must say I'm inspired, and just the energy in the room of all the young people that are out to make a difference in the world. And the topic today, trade your ideas, trade everything. I mean, there's immense capacity, and I'm going to talk a bit about that. Before I do, just quick introduction. I'm from Vancouver, Canada. All right. Do we have some Canadians here? Excellent. Beautiful. Okay, then you will appreciate that I'm going to touch on three things that Vancouver is famous for. One of them is something you'll all know that looks like this. And in fact, let's do it. So we'll start at that end. Let's do the wave. Come on. Around. Here we go. All right. Beautiful. Excellent. One more time. One more time. All right. Fantastic. So that started in Vancouver. Oh, even the floor. We love you. Beautiful. So that, few people know this, but that started in Vancouver in the 70s when there was a football team, I know you call it football here, but football team, that was called the Whitecaps. And so, of course, it was the wave, and it was the great cheering thing that we did. The second thing that Vancouver, again, very people know, is famous for, is something that I think you will all feel passionate about. Sorry, pardon? Ice hockey, yeah, no, that's Canada. Vancouver, I'm talking about, is the place that Occupy Wall Street began, which I think is quite significant. Probably one of the most, in my view, other than the Arab Spring, one of the most interesting movements that has taken place in a long time. And it started with a little ad company in Vancouver that posted an ad that caused this extraordinary event that traveled around the world in a handful of weeks. I think it was 3,400 cities had an Occupy event take place. And it was really interesting because that Occupy message, it was really unclear. The media kept saying they don't know what they want. And it's true, it wasn't well articulated, but what was very well articulated was the problem. And there was all kinds of momentum around the issues of injustice and the issues of an economic system that was failing, and that it wasn't fair, and that this inequality was problematic and needed to be resolved. I went down to Occupy Wall Street when it was just beginning, and I walked around and I was just trying to understand what people were really feeling. And there was a little girl, she was 7 years old, and she was sitting there holding a sign, and the sign said, "Look, Mom, no future." And it just touched me, and I just like, wow, this is really what this is about. And there's another young woman, I actually got her on video, and I said, tell me, she was a very attractive young woman sitting there camping on this little spot, and I said, why are you here? And she says, well, I've got 2 master's degrees. I'm in debt over my head from going to school, and I just can't get a job. And I've been applying everything you could imagine. I finally took a job working at Starbucks for $9 an hour. She goes, I figured that you can't just be on the sidelines saying, hey, let's, there needs to be change. You got to get in and do it. And so that's what I'm hoping to inspire you here today with an innovation that we've been working on for about 12 years that has truly game-changing potential. And it's your generation that's going to realize this and make it happen. And so I'll just give you a little bit of context for it. It's a project that's described now as Recipco. By the way, that name is changing to something that is absolutely perfect. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what it is today because it hasn't been unveiled, but it's much more fitting, and it's going to be known by that name. And that's coming in the next probably 60 days. But this is about reinventing and rethinking global economics. This is about challenging something of such scale that at the beginning of this endeavor, people used to look at me like, are you serious? You're really going to try and boil the ocean? And there were many more skeptics than there were supporters. However, the tide has changed, and now it's quite the opposite. Almost everywhere we go, people want to involve themselves. They want to support us. We've had government sponsors. And it was born around me coming out of internet world and realizing that I could create a business from nothing, literally myself and an assistant, to where we hired 3,500 people over a period of less than 2 years. We raised $500 million, and then we built a company that did a IPO that was valued at over $2 billion, and then the company was sold for over $1 billion after the crash. And I realized that you couldn't build things and scale them at extraordinary levels. And I was out looking for something that could make a change and where I could also have social development happening at the same time. And we discovered a world that goes on that many people don't understand or know that it goes on to the extent that it does, and it's the world of non-monetary trade. And I'm talking about all the kinds of trade that go on in the world today where money isn't actually used. Now, we're familiar with favors we do for each other, and you babysit my children, and and my kids will come over and paint your fence, and traditional barter. But if you actually look at the world, there's all kinds of non-monetary trade that go on, from reciprocal trade, counter trade, offset trade, industrial participation trade. We discovered about 30 different ways that non-monetary trade is defined. Now, when you go and look at this and start analyzing, you think, well, why are people trading goods for goods and capacity for capacity? And you discover that it's actually due to a major market failure. And that major market failure is at the core of the economic injustice that exists in the world. It's at the core of the division between those who have and those who have not. It's at the core of the issue that the Occupy Wall Street community was trying to surface. And I'm going to give you just a couple of examples of what I mean by non-monetary trade. A company like General Electric is selling power generating turbines valued at $150 million to China Railway and taking payment in frozen chicken. And you kind of think, well, why would GE ever do this? And when you actually drill into it, the reason is that that's what China Railway wanted to pay in. They had frozen chickens because they sold transportation services to a chicken manufacturer, and they had a warehouse full of frozen chicken. If you could find a way, and then this is what GE does, is they unlock and create new sources of demand by taking payment in something other than cash. And so when you talk to GE, you say, well, why would you do that? They say, well, there are two reasons. One, we made a sale that we wouldn't have made if we were relying on payment in cash. We found an alternative path to realize a sale by taking counterparties' goods. Secondly, we incurred a lot of friction, pain, and difficulties in doing that trade, so we had to accept payment. So we charged a premium, and we charged that premium in chicken. And then we had to turn around and sell the chicken. So at the end of this, what happened is a trade occurred that wouldn't have otherwise occurred. Now, think about the world today. Every company builds ahead of demand. If you want to grow your business, you have to build the hotel, then you fill it. You lay the telecom fiber, and then for 25 years you fill it. Everyone builds ahead of demand. It's a fundamental economic requirement. That means if you want to grow your business, you have unused capacity. Guess what? The world is abundant in unused capacity. In the late 2007, we had a crisis. The first thing that happened after Lehman Brothers fell over was people started losing confidence in the banking system. And then it was the economic system. Ultimately, it was the monetary system. A number of the G20 meetings, the primary issue was, what are we going to do about the global monetary system? No easy solution for that, because it's a political logjam. You have a global monetary system that's not global. We have 178 independent sovereign monetary systems. Try and get agreement amongst them on monetary policy. I mean, look at what is happening in the Eurozone. It's just a small example of this. So the global monetary system is not serving the function that it was originally intended to serve, which is to facilitate trade. And if you look at the world today, where we have an abundance of capacity, when when we had the crisis and demand fell off a waterfall, yet everyone was building ahead of demand, the delta of unused capacity today in the world is unprecedented. We've never in the history of mankind seen the amount of capacity that exists in the world today. Yet, on the other side of this equation, the world population continues to grow. We have more need than ever in the history of mankind. Now, it doesn't take rocket science to look at this equation and say, more need than ever in the history of mankind, more capacity than ever in the history of mankind, and everyone's complaining that there's no growth and no trade. And then when you understand why that is, and unfortunately within this time frame I'm going to have limited ability to go into this, but the essence of it is a fractured and a disconnected monetary system. Money was invented for a very specific reason in the first place. People used to trade goods. I was a farmer, you traded vegetables, and I gave you beef. And if you had a match, you could do that, and it was very efficient. And in this world where GE is trading power generating per turbines and taking frozen chicken, it's not such a match. They have to find a buyer. It's very cumbersome. It's very difficult. And in many cases, people won't do it. The original solution was you went to the marketplace and you would go down, and now, even though you didn't have what I wanted, you wanted what the guy in the next stall wanted, and we would do multi-party trades in the souks and the bazaars and the marketplaces in the center of town were the solution. The real solution was the invention of money. And of course, the Vikings were one of the innovators in this, in using shells as a method of transaction. So we didn't have to trade goods for goods. I would buy your goods and pay you in shells. Now, there was token sticks. There were many different kinds of concepts of money that emerged to solve this double coincidence of wants problem. The problem was, over time, the character of money changed. And it started to be precious. When it was shells, and you received shells as payment, I pay you shells for your services and goods, the first thing you want to do is go and get something for them. Now think of money's evolution where it starts to becoming precious, gold and silver, and now I pay you in gold, what's the first thing you do? You hide it. You put it in your jacket, you dig it into the ground, you put it under a mattress, you ultimately put it into the king's castle behind the guards for safekeeping. And the goldsmiths manage it and issue certificates. The problem is they started to realize, well, no one ever comes to get the gold. And money starts becoming scarce. And what then happens is people start figuring out how to make money off money. It starts with interest rates. They realize no one comes to get the gold. We can issue more certificates than there is gold. We know this today as quantitative easing. And this was the beginning of what we call the corruption of money. But it was the separation of money from its original function of simply serving as a unit of account and a medium of exchange to overcome the double coincidence of wants. Now, if you could find a way, so that this made it, I mean, there's no shortage of money in the world, remember? And there's no shortage of capacity, and there's no shortage of need. But money is not being used for what it was originally purposed to be used for, because everyone has figured out how to make money off money. I think there's a song like that, money for money, chicks for free. And this is the issue. And people blame the bankers. Look, the bankers just figured out how to make money off money. And all the power to them. But it dysfunctionally separated the role that money was to play. And so now we have this problem in the world that money's not available. Now, you go and ask any corporation, would you like to sell some of that unused capacity that you've built ahead of demand? Every single company says yes. Of course they would. Would you be willing to take US dollars? Absolutely. How about Uganda's shilling? You know, some hesitation. What about frozen chicken? Oh, we're not really set up to do it. Yes, GE is. The world is abundant in capacity. If you could just have a mechanism where capacity, which is a real asset, was the money of the system, you would change global economics. And so that is what our mission is. We've set out to create a mechanism that uses the latest and greatest thinking in global monetary economics, supply-demand economics, wholesale financial markets, risk management, and we've been formulating for the last, well, after 4 years of research and trying to figure out all the different kinds of issues around non-monetary exchange, we formulated a mechanism for how you can trade capacity in a wholesale financial markets way that allows capacity to be unlocked. And let me give you an example. In Africa, we all know about the kind of trades Africa is doing with China. China's saying, we'll build you the power generating plant, we'll put in the railway, you give us the mineral rights on both sides of that rail for the next 25 years. That is a non-monetary trade. It's heavily slanted towards China. It's terribly unfair, but it's a trade that is being done on a non-monetary basis. If you look at Africa, HP, one of the companies we're deeply engaged with, they look at Africa, they say, in the next 50 years, we see the most of our growth is going to come from emerging markets. It has to. They've all got need. Every one of them needs to buy, every person in Africa needs our equipment. The problem is they don't have any money to pay for it. But guess what they have an abundance of? Capacity, human labor, sunshine, arable land, minerals like we don't even realize. But those are illiquid assets. Now remember I said there's lots of need, so we know the need's there. There's no money to make need demand, so it's not buying power. So HP can't sell the computers. But there's immense capacity. If you look at capacity as an asset, money's just an asset, and say, could we combine illiquid assets, not money, but illiquid assets with need and create a whole new source of buying power? Of course, that is the system that we've created. And you do that simply by doing two things. One, and it's not that simple, but one is fairly simple. You create a global marketplace where everyone who has capacity can populate it into a global exchange, and then they can discover each other in a very efficient way, communicate, transact, and settle. The problem still remains that each other doesn't want what each other has, so you have to have money. And if you don't have money, you have to have some other unit of account. So we had to invent a global, non-sovereign currency, a trading currency that's purpose is to facilitate trade of capacity, which is real. It's not about speculation, it's a currency that is just for trade. And we figured out a way, with a lot of work and a lot of thinking, to back the unit 100%. There is no currency in the world that is backed 100%, including the US dollar. Gold standard was abolished in 1971. All currencies are fiat. We figured out how to create a global, borderless, non-sovereign currency which is anti-inflationary, that is 100% backed, and it's backed by companies who have real assets, that have real balance sheet, that you would be inspired by their backing. And that's the essence of the model. Unfortunately, time is up, so I'm not going to go into much more of it now, but the social dimension of this is the beginning of a movement. It's sponsored by the UK government, the Chinese government. There isn't a government that we speak to who isn't saying, can you please come and set up a hub here? We need economic solutions. We need innovation. We need new ideas of how to create growth. We need a more fair and a more just economic system that is more inclusive. That's what this is. This prejudices nobody. Doesn't matter if you don't have money, as long as you have capacity, you can earn the units. And you can create all kinds of new commerce that would never have occurred. And this is like, you know, on my way here, we drove by this cathedral. And I've always been interested in cathedrals because the thinking that goes on with cathedrals, I call it cathedral thinking. It's long-term thinking. When they build the cathedral, the people who started building it, they never lived through its actual completion. And this is also a movement that I think the youth of our world need to harness and get behind, like Occupy Wall Street, around similar issues. And I know that there is one working group called the Social Movement Group that's going to be doing a protest. We would love to invite them to engage. So thank you very much. And just one last wave. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you, James Fierro, for your inspirational words. Our next speaker has Hope as his middle name, which is kind of cool in itself. He has set out to fight poverty through founding his Operation Hope and also co-founding Global Dignity. Along the way, he has teamed up with President Obama and our own Crown Prince Haakon. And tonight he wants to team up with you. So please welcome John Hope Bryant.
Good evening. I'm from the black church, okay? So I'm used to seek and respond. So I'm not here to talk at you, I'm here to talk with you. Good evening. Good evening. Now you're all honorary black people. So I started up there because that's what you're supposed to do. But I'm gonna come down here because I wanna be right with you. And I'm gonna make my way out because this is not a traditional presentation, and I'm not a traditional presenter. I'm not here to give you a speech. You'll have plenty of those. I'm here to have a conversation with you. Let me start by saying I may frustrate a few of you in my remarks, but every good marriage is made of constructive friction. You cannot actually have a rainbow without a storm first. It's a scientific fact. So I can start out by saying, let me sort of take away all my advantages. I can start out by saying that I was invited here because we've raised almost $2 billion to empower the poor. I'd actually say that's pretty embarrassing. Given there's 7 billion people on the planet and more than 5 billion of them are struggling every day, the fact that we've served 2 million people and raised almost $2 billion is a drop in the bucket. And I wear myself out every day because I think we're not doing enough, that I'm not doing enough. I'm slightly embarrassed by all that we're not doing. I get embarrassed when I go get awards because I think people are giving awards for something that I should be doing anyway, something we all should be doing anyway. So let me move that out of the way. We advise presidents, so what? We write books, so what? The only thing that matters today is the power of an idea that has been operationalized. And one thing I like that James said, and I don't know whether James's idea, which is bold, is gonna work, to be blunt with you. No different than I'm not sure when my work's gonna work in 20 years from now. But I do know that he is the heart of what makes this world work at all. It is the power of an idea. And what he should know and what you should know is that Dr. King gave the I Have a Dream speech 100 times before the March on Washington. Most times kids were going to sleep as he was talking. People walked out while he was giving his speech, and I'm sure the 55th time he said, "What is this worth?" I'm sure he was in halls like this, and people were looking at well, they didn't have BlackBerries back then, but looking at their notes, and what is this guy talking about, and why is this important? And if you are excited about I Have a Dream, then go read Letter from a Birmingham Jail, because that was 100 theologians, his academic peer, telling him to get out of town, leave Birmingham. You're a rubble-rouser, you're a pest, you're irrelevant, you're not important, and you're wrong. And his response to them was brilliant and dignified. He disagreed without being disagreeable. My pastor would say, talk without being offensive, John. Listen without being defensive, John. And leave even your adversary with their dignity. Because if you don't, they'll spend the rest of their life trying to make you miserable. Dr. King knew what he was about. He knew that what the Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And so he stayed focused on his vision. And what would have happened if he had given up the 99th time? Here's what I know. There would be no President Barack Obama today. That's what I know. His persistence and his vision was everything. So James is part of a wonderful tradition in the world that we hope to infuse in you. It's the tradition of reimagining everything and challenging things that we think we know to be true. and being bold about your dreams. And why am I talking to you with so much passion? Because that's all there is. Love is work, non-love is laziness, and anti-love is evil. Evil exists, but it's very rare. Most people are just lazy, financially lazy, spiritually lazy, emotionally lazy, intellectually lazy. They just don't want to do the work. Love is work. When you have children, they will drive you crazy and you'll want to throttle them every Tuesday. When you get married, you'll want a divorce every fourth Friday. You want to chuck your studies every Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. Not when you're talking to your parents about funding tuition, but other than that, let's be honest, love is work. Nothing good comes easy. I've redefined a few things in my own life. We talk about wanting to eradicate poverty. I think we're looking for love in all the wrong places and looking for poverty in all the wrong places too. Here's my definition of poverty. Poverty, there's a difference between being broke and being poor. Being broke is economic, but being poor is a disabling frame of mind and a depressed condition of your spirit, and we must vow never to be poor again. Am I messing up your camera angles by walking this way? Am I? I'm going to do it anyway, am I? Okay. We've got to redefine success. Success is going from failure to failure without... You got to be ready. Success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Here's a fact. You cannot have a rainbow without a storm first. It's a scientific fact that you cannot have a rainbow without a storm first. Life is about managing pain, folks. It's about successfully managing pain, the pain you create for yourself and the pain visited upon you by others. Every day you're guaranteed to have pain show up on your front doorstep. The only choice you have, listen to me now, this is the only thing that matters. The only choice that you have is what you do about it. Life is 10% what life does to you and 90% how you choose to respond to it. The only question is what's your response going to be? I love what James said in his presentation, but I disagree with one of his premises. And by the way, as friends, we can disagree. All love is not patting people on the back and saying, oh, ain't that sweet. Love sometimes is no. Love sometimes is disparate. I disagree with them about Occupy Wall Street, and I don't care whether you like it or not. Occupy Wall Street is brilliant. Brilliant, except that it's wrong. And it's wrong for one simple reason. Were they wrong that free enterprise and capitalism was broken? No, of course not. Were they wrong that there were people who were greedy? Ambassador Andrew Young, Dr. King's aide in the civil rights movement, said that men and women fell for 3 reasons. The ladies look at me like, what kind of presentation is this? Ambassador Andrew Young says men and women fell for 3 reasons: arrogance, pride, and greed. Arrogance, pride, and greed. The problem is not the greed. Oh, we know all that stuff's wrong. The problem with Occupy Wall Street is that they became experts in what they are against. In a world where you've got to figure out what you're for. No one ever succeeds long term based on what you're against. So they rallied all around the world and got all this enthusiasm up, and the media was sitting there with their pen out waiting to write something. Give me something to write. Give me a vision. What does the Bible say? Where there is no vision, the people perish. Dr. King didn't go up to the March on Washington and says, I have a dream that GDP will grow by 2%. He had a bold and audacious dream about what we were for. Thank you, I got it. And you got to really get underneath Dr. King's philosophy to understand that he was an optimist. He was a serial optimist. And here's what he said, and I think sin is separation. Sin is separation. Here's what he said. The civil rights movement was about saving black men's bodies and white men's souls. He said this, and in 1960 that was a radical statement. But what he was saying, even by those who rejected him, was you may reject me, but I don't reject you. I can't reject you because we're all in this thing together. Whatever goes around comes around. The universe has a perfect accounting system. And so Dr. King knew he had to enroll people in his vision. He knew he had to have everybody wrapped up in his enlightened self-interest. And by the way, in the short term, he was dismissed and dissed. We say all nice things about Dr. King now, but back then he was called Martin Luther King, Martin Luther Coon, Uncle Tom, sellout, and wannabe, and these were his friends talking. He came to Norway and won the Nobel Peace Prize, and he took the $100,000 gift, it's now $1 million. He took the $100,000 gift, cut it into 10 pieces, $10,000 each, sent it to 10 civil rights organizations who had done good work, and never got a thank you note. Not one of them said thank you because they resented him. They were in competition with him. They didn't like him. Dr. King was asked when he's working in the South, do you like the people you're dealing with? And Dr. King said, if I chose to like them, I would have had to reject them. I chose to love them instead. Whew. That's beautiful. Love is work. You've got to step out of your comfort zones. Get out of your own way. You've got to step over mess, not in it. You've got to have a vision that's big enough for everybody in it or you lose. We lose. But we're not talking about history from 50 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. I'm talking about history being made right now. We are living in a moment in history right now. And you are the history makers. James is right. The world's all screwed up. But you cannot get a degree in all screwed up. You cannot make a living. Well, actually, you can make a living in being all screwed up. You can make a living, unfortunately, in telling everybody else they're all screwed up. But you cannot change the world by specializing in all screwed up. Are you with me? On my way here, we were driving down the street. I think truth is universal. It has to be something that you can see everywhere with a reimagined scope. On the way here, we passed by, we were in a small van, and we passed by a big bus that you know occupies the public highways here. And we got too far into the bus's lane. It wasn't an unhealthy level, but maybe a few inches. And the bus, because it's a big bus and he is part of the establishment, he blew his horn. Let him know, I'm the bus. These are my highways. Now, we can see the bus. Stevie Wonder can see the bus. Stevie Wonder's my friend, I can say it. We can see the bus, but he was saying, I'm the power here. I'm the big bus. I've got the horsepower. I've got the size. He wanted us to know he was large and in charge, but it wasn't enough for that. He wanted to rub our noses in it. So after he blew the horn and we put, the driver, he steps aside, he comes by and he leans around and he gives us like the bird. He flips us off. Like, what's wrong with you? We're driving just like you, Holmes. And we're going someplace just like you, just a different way. But we were respectful to him. We waved, hey man, how you doing? We killed him with kindness, and then we made a left. And he kept on going. What's my message? Just because you're smaller, just because you're newer, just because you're more nimble, just because you have a different view doesn't mean you're wrong. And sometimes you have to take a different lane and a different route to a different destination. Are you with me? We have got to come up with a new vision for ourselves. Occupy Wall Street is amazing and will have its place in history, but it will not last. You've heard it from me. Because it does not have a vision for where it goes from here. The media was desperately looking, give me a plan. Please, give me something I can write. I need for you today to give us something we can write. And then I need you to get up and do something about it. Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech, it's great. But Dr. Dorothy Height, what people don't know, is a lady named Dr. Dorothy Height, 96 years young when I had dinner with her the last time. And she was a little young lady when Dr. King was speaking. And back in those days, what you may not know is that I Have a Dream speech was not about Dr. King, it was about the Pullman Porters Union and a guy named A. Philip Randolph. And for 20 years, he'd been threatening the president to do a march in Washington, D.C. And every time he threatened, the president said, no, don't march, come meet with me. And because of A. Philip Randolph, the military was desegregated after World War II. 20 years later, he threatened to march again. President Kennedy said, I don't care, march. So they marched, and they had 2 hours of speeches, and they got to the end, and Dr. King was scheduled to speak, and they said, the people who sort of were jealous of him, Dr. King, the young people, everybody's tired, you know, we'll catch you next time. True story. We'll catch you next time. Please, will you understand that, you know, people are tired, sort of like you now, wanting me to get off the stage. And Dr. King was gracious, said, sure. Dorothy Height said, no, the young people listen to Dr. King. Just give him 8 minutes. What can he possibly do in 8 minutes? Nobody remembers anything else. He changed everything on that day. And it was a lady named Dr. Dorothy Height who now owns a building on Pennsylvania Avenue right down the street from the White House, the National Council for Negro Women, the only minority organization to own a building on Pennsylvania Avenue down the street from the White House, the most powerful dress arguably in the world. But she didn't have the big placard that Dr. King had. She wasn't the person that we all remember, but she was a cog in the wheel of change. Can you be a cog in the wheel of change? It's amazing what you can do when you're not concerned with the credit. We don't have an economic crisis, ladies and gentlemen. We have a crisis of virtues and values. Everything is on the table because this is not a recession, it's a reset. And everything that happens in the next 10 years, and I would argue definitely in the next 20 years, will change everything about your children's lives and about their grandchildren's lives and about their This is a 100-year reset for everything. What are you going to do about it? Now, I have proven, you can tell I've got a lot of energy. But with all of my energy, traveling 500,000 air miles a year, 20 years of doing the work I just told you, I've only made a little bit of a mark, which means, as Dr. King knew, you cannot do this alone. So Dr. King had 60 employees. This is amazing now. 60 employees for SCLC, a $600,000 annual operating budget, which is about what it costs to run this building, by the way. Where the cost of running this building is what the entire Dr. King movement was financed with. And he changed the world. He did it without firing a shot. But he believed and he dedicated his life to that belief. But he also worked with people and advanced people's agenda even when they didn't like him, and even when they didn't agree with him, and even when they wanted to disrespect him. But he did the right thing because it was the right thing to do. Will you do that too? Look, you cannot have a movement. Why am I coming all around the world for this? I told Crown Prince Haakon I was coming, and he said, you tell him I'm with him. I think he's the people's prince, by the way. That's one cool dude. That's my brother from another mother. You mess with him, you got to mess with me first. Well, his Secret Service, then me. But we understand that only young people change the world. That's really my only message to you. I came here to try to rattle your cages, to get you out of your comfort zones. It's so easy to sit there and judge whoever's on this stage and say, are you entertaining me? I'm not here to entertain you. By the way, it's a free speech. I've invested. You're not paying me. I know what it feels like to be paid. I get paid well. I'm here really investing in you. I don't have anything to prove to you. You've got something to prove to me. You've got to prove in the next 20 years that this investment of time was well worth it. So my message here is simple. I risk you not liking me by pushing your buttons. I risk you not respecting my message and turning around and letting me see the back of your shoulders because maybe I've offended some sensibility. And if I've offended that, please blame it on my head, not my heart. I risk saying things that push envelopes and cut emotions. I risk saying things and inferring things that might go against your fundamental belief. But what you cannot say is, I don't care about you. You cannot say, I don't love this planet. You cannot say, I didn't give you everything I have. I love you and I don't even know you. And so you say, what can you do in 15 minutes? I can't break down the business plan for Operation Hope. I can't get you into the heads of global dignity and what we do there. I can't get you in the head of the counsel I give to President Barack Obama and give him my top security clearance. I couldn't tell you what that is anyway. I can't tell you what I told President Bush, which he didn't listen to. I can't tell you. I can't tell you what I told the first black president, President Bill Clinton. I can't tell you what's in my book or the book that I'm writing next. I can't do any of that in 15 minutes. So you say, what can you do in 15 minutes? I can give you every damn thing I've got. When you die empty. Give life, both feet, both hands, every ounce of breath you've got. Because this is it, folks. Here's my question. Don't you want to live a legacy? Don't you want the world to know you were here? I'm talking to you. Don't you want, at the end of your day, to do more than pay bills, pay tuition, to buy a nice car, to live in a nice house? Because nobody's going to care about that. Don't you want to leave this earth and know that for the end of your children's time, the world will know you were here, that you made a difference? If that's the question, if that's your answer, then you got to live for something larger and more important than yourself. In Norway, they have military service for a year, I believe. Even the Crown Prince went through it. I wonder whether if we turn military service with a gun to public service with your heart, and every young person had to have a mandatory 1 or 2 years of public service and community service, running a nonprofit, doing something for somebody other than themselves. You know, we might have to stop worrying about our little lousy problems if we start focusing on somebody else's very real problems. We don't have problems, we have inconveniences. Whatever we're going through are high-class problems. If you're here right now, you've got high-class problems. We are blessed. So it's 116 nations here. There's no excuse. You can't say you don't understand. You can't say you don't represent. You can't say it's not possible. And certainly, given your age, you can't say there's not enough time to make a change. So my challenge to you is real simple. What kind of bird do you want to be? There are 3 types of birds, like 3 types of people. There are eagles, there are buzzards, and there are turkeys. Now, I didn't look at you for any reason when I said the last thing. Eagles don't fly in packs. You've never seen a flock of eagles. You know what I mean. No, it's a very important point. It's a very important point. If you can't stand in front of an audience or your parents or whoever it is and say exactly what you believe and mean it, go sit down. See, I've lived my truth. I was homeless for 6 months of my life. I lost everything. I've been successful, I've been a failure, I've been almost bankrupt. I've been from up and I've been down. I know what failure looks like, I know what it feels like, and I still know I'm God's child, and I can change the world, and I'm gonna go around you, over you, through you, but nobody's gonna stop me when I wanna get to where I'm going. So you can interrupt me if you want to, you can have a commentary, it don't change a thing. Because if you stand in between me and my mission, I'm coming right at you. Back to my message. An eagle raises their children differently. An eagle's nest is made of sharp little twigs. Message. If you get big enough and you push up against the inside of that nest, you need to get up and go get a job. You cannot be 48 years old and living with your mama. And then buzzards are different birds. Buzzards are low altitude birds. Buzzards love pecks. Buzzards are always stepping on your head to elevate themselves. Buzzards are always player hating, never player congratulating. Always got something negative to say about somebody. Well, why is he up there? When is he going to get off the stage? Why did they invite him? Do you know it takes like 7 or 8 muscles to smile and like 34 plus muscles to frown? So when you go to school tomorrow or class or work at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, somebody's dead asleep on their desk, now you know it is exhausting being a negative person. But the worst kind of bird, actually I don't mind buzzards, at least they tell you who they are. The worst kind of bird is a turkey, because a turkey's got wings and can't even fly. All they do is profile. Translation, trying to be something you are. Oh, that was really weak. I'm gonna ask you a question in a minute. Do I have 1 minute? I'm sorry, I got low self-esteem. I need to know you with me. Do I have 1 minute? Yes. Here's my message, my outgoing message to you. Here's to the crazy ones. This is my mission, your business plan going forward. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules. They have no respect for the status quo. You can praise them, disagree with them, quote them, disbelieve them, glorify them, or vilify them. About the only thing you cannot do is to ignore them, because they push the human race forward. Maybe they have to be crazy. How else can you stare at an empty canvas and see a work of art, or sit in silence and hear a song that's never been written, or gaze at a red planet and see a laboratory on wheels? What some people see as crazy, others see as genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to believe they can change the world are the ones who usually do. I love each and every one of you. I hope you leave here transformed. I hope you have the courage to be courageous. I hope that you find your path and you don't let anybody get you off of it. I hope when you figure out what you're for, what you're passionate about, you stand up in a hall all by yourself and scream from the top of your lungs, so that even God, him or herself, can hear it. So I'm asking you one parting question. What kind of bird do you want to be? Eagle. Okay, say it like you believe it. What kind of bird do you want to be? Eagle. I love you. See you.
For a second there, I was imagining having Mr. Bryant as my science teacher. It's a scientific fact. Thank you. Our the third and last speaker originally comes all the way from India. She's the coordinator for Slum Dwellers International, a network of organizations working against urban poverty. She's been doing this work for over 30 years. It has spread to over 30 countries. Very impressive. So give a warm welcome to Celine the Cruz.
I want to be the heron. I want to stand on one leg and peck. Thank you for the invitation, and it's been a great pleasure to see so many of you here, so eager and so enthusiastic about the future of our planet. And it gives me great hope, because I started when I was 16, and very idealistic, and got completely brainwashed by a group of slum dwellers. And I have never regretted that day, because I learned from a group of people who are not educated, who had never been to university. They were on the streets, they survived, they knew how to survive elegantly, and they survived in an alien environment with a lot of hostility around them. So I am here to present that voice, and I hope I'm able to do justice to that. This story began in the early 80s, where every week or every fortnight, the municipal van or the police would go and break people's homes along the street. And I was part of one of those do-good social workers who had joined this organization, and you stood there and you watched them being demolished, and you felt very helpless, and you didn't know what to do about it. All I did, I remember, was stand behind a wall and cry, because you feel so the police is there, the municipal vans are there, and you little thing there, you don't have a solution about it. And as a group of young people and middle-class people in the city, we wanted to make a difference, but we didn't know where to begin. And the more we spoke to the women on these streets, we saw that actually they had a solution already. It was not for us to give them a solution. They had the solution. It was our business to unfold it and actually bring it into the open and help them to see that solution. And what were these street women saying? What were the pavement women saying? They all left their homes. It wasn't as if they had a house in their villages, but they left their villages because there was no food to eat. You couldn't just live in your house and your piece of land. Most of them were bonded laborers, or most of them were in some form of, they had some basic skills, like weaving or handicrafts, but it didn't support them anymore. And so when they came to the city, they had to find a place to live, a place where they were invisible, where nobody could see them, somewhere along some street. And it was some uncle or some relative or somebody would tell them where to squat, and they would squat there. They'd find a job for themselves. They'd go and work as domestic servants in the neighboring buildings. And their children never went to school because they lived on the streets. They didn't have an address, and so the school never took them and never registered them. But the children also did odd jobs. So a family of 7 to 8 would work hard from morning to night to earn a pretty decent salary, but nothing to say or nothing to show at the end of the day. So every week, the municipal van came, break your houses, you start from scratch, you buy your bamboo, you buy your plastic, you buy your tin sheets, and you keep rebuilding. And this did not make economic sense at all, because you realize that each time if they only saved the money for the number of times their houses were broken and they had to rebuild, they would have got a house in the city with the kind of money that they spend rebuilding each time the house is broken. So there were many things that we did not have answers for, but we saw that if we were able to actually articulate it in a way that the city understood, we would be able to make a difference. So here you were dealing with a municipal corporation, or you're dealing with a government who's clueless about this segment of their society. So you're talking of 6 million people in a city of 12 million that live in slums. So you're talking of 50% of the city living in slums. But the city has no capacity, has no policy, has no legal framework to deal with 50% of their city's population. So you see how deficit we are of ideas. Meanwhile, you had the organization of slum dwellers who realized that they had to find their own solutions, because all they did was fight one demolition after the next. And these solutions were built upon their own capacity. And what were these? So one of the slogans that the slum dweller movement has is, power is money and information. And these are the two things the middle class have that the poor don't have. They don't have money, and you don't have information. And the middle class make good use of that, and they reach many high levels in society just by having that little bit of push and the little bit of opportunity and the little bit of being in the right place that the poor don't have. And it was these two things that actually made the big difference. So through daily savings and collecting their little money every day, the groups started organizing themselves, and these were mostly women. If you ask me what the magic of this process is and how it has survived for 30 years, because 80% of the membership of this organization are women. When a man enters the city, he doesn't really need a house. He can sleep on the street, he sleeps under a bridge, he sleeps under anywhere. He doesn't care. When he brings his wife with him, they need shelter. So even if it's a plastic sheet, they'll put a rod on the pavement. I don't like that light there. They put a rod on the, they put a rod on the pavement, and they make that into a wall, and they make that into their makeshift house. In the morning, they roll the plastic up, and there's no house there anymore. So you saw the ingenuity and the ideas with which these communities had learned to survive in an alien city. And what they did was, thank you. In 1985, for the first time, the government actually took a very strong stance. There was a Supreme Court judgment that said all pavement dwellers had to actually be demolished. And for the city had no information about who these people were. Everybody was clubbed as urban slum dwellers. So for the first time, we did a research, and in that research, we were able to break many myths about pavement dwellers. And the research made it very clear that these people were gainfully employed, that they were all working in the informal economy, either recycling or as head loaders or as domestic servants or whatever. They were all earning some form of income, but they were not part of the formal economy, though the city never recognized them, and the city didn't know that they actually all earned and had an income. They all paid for their basic services. So though they lived on the streets, they had to bring water from somewhere, and they paid for that water. So they paid up to 10 to 15 rupees a day for water. Each time they used the public toilet, they paid 1 rupee, which so for a family of 8 to 10, they paid that much per day. So if you looked at their monthly outgoings, they were much more than a middle-class family in that neighborhood. And so if you did the arithmetic, you knew that over time, that if they actually saved, they would be able to find a house in the city. So saving, the money was the first thing that they decided. If you go to a bank and say, give us a loan, nobody would give you a loan looking at your face and living on the street. So you had to actually prove that you're creditworthy and that you were capable of getting a loan. The second area of homework that they did was to actually look at the land that they had in their city. What were the options that they had? In a city like Bombay, where the land prices are as high as New York and Tokyo, the chances for a pavement dweller to get a house is zilch. So how do you even begin to have this negotiation with a city where the middle class doesn't have her house? So if you have to compete with middle class who are also looking for a place, you have no chance at all. So what did we do? The women and all of us, we would go ticketless on trains and buses and actually find vacant places in the city. And we did our homework. We said, the city says that there is no land in the city. Let us actually prove that there is no land in the city. We don't know if there is land in the city or don't know land. They keep saying, you know, the prices in Bombay are so high, no land in the city. Of course, you see people coming in every day. And when we went to these pieces of land, we saw that there were land actually earmarked for low-cost housing. And what was on some of these lands that were earmarked for low-cost housing, they were used for other purposes. So they were de-reserved, And the government very happily used it for a factory or something else. And that's when the penny dropped, and we realized if the master plan, which we think is sacrosanct, can be manipulated, then there is a way to manipulate it. Then if people are organized and get their act together, there's a way to manipulate it as well. So they did a homework of all the vacant lands in the city. They prioritized 10 pieces of land. They realized that the government says no to first, they'll ask for the second, they'll ask for the third. They did their homework on the house design and construction. They took their saris, which is 5.5 feet, the Indian sari, put it on the floor. They multiplied it 3 times, and they decided that would be the length and breadth of their house, because that's what was affordable. They took their chains, which was a foot, and they used that as a measuring scale. You're talking of women who don't know to read and write, completely illiterate, and trying to... But you realize that these were not rockets. This was not rocket science, that these were simple ideas that the women could use to actually rebuild and to aspire and to be able to think of their dream house. It wasn't at all difficult. The fourth area was, of course, their whole organizational setup. And it was this organizational setup and building this voice, which was primary to this whole organization, that actually helped them to be able to negotiate with their city. So it was money, it was finding information about their communities at a city level, and it was organizing themselves. It was these 3 things that actually was the magic, and that was the power that actually allowed them to move government and change government policy. After 30 years today, the pavement dwellers in Bombay have got land, and they've all moved into houses. There are lots of people still living in slums, but you have now at least an engagement with government, where government is ready to listen and ready to look at options, and they invite them to the table, and they are looking at ways in which to resolve this. Similarly, this has now spread, this movement has spread to other cities in India, it's spread to other countries. In most countries in Southern Africa, in East Africa, in Latin America, in Bolivia, in Brazil, you have large movements of the urban poor who are organizing themselves around savings, around collecting their information, and going with basic alternatives and solutions to their governments, and are able to actually find slum upgrading solutions with their local city authorities. What we have today is a fund called the Urban Poor Fund. Most of these funds are from the savings of these poor communities, and then they're able to leverage other monies from that. So recently, the Gates Foundation gave Slum Dwellers International $25 million, which is a lot of money. Not for all the slum dwellers of the world, but it helped us to create a creative fund. You're talking of dealing with money differently. So it helped us to actually create a pot of money. So a slum dweller anywhere in the world can actually ask for a loan, because as a slum dweller, no bank entertains you. But you can ask for a loan, upgrade your house, repay that money. And over time, we've been able to see that by just creating such kind of precedents, and by showing cities that we are not there just to scream and shout and protest, but we're coming with real solutions, that city governments are beginning to respect poor communities and their solutions, and they're also coming to the table saying, okay, it's embarrassing when you go to the city government with information, with money, with a solution. They can't say we can't do anything. They have to do something. And this has been the power of this negotiation, where you go with something in your hands. You're not going empty-handed. You're not saying we are poor, please give us something. You're going there saying, this is the homework we've done. This is the money we've saved. This is the solution we've found. This is the affordable house we've designed. Now please make the land available. And when you go with prepared, you see that the doors open. And it was as simple, nothing complex about this. If you try it and you go to any community anywhere in the world and just do this, you will also find that the community responds in the same way, and the city will respond in the same way. And over time, this is just multiplying. It's like a snowball effect. It's like a dam that's burst open. You cannot stop communities because they have experienced the capacity and the power of coming together, of organizing themselves around money and information, and going with concrete solutions. And what's the time? Do I have time? 1 minute? Okay. Yeah, so basically, you're talking of a critical mass of slum dwellers in 33 countries who are now creating a movement of the urban poor, who have been able to shape and design their own life. And there's always this tension with the middle class in the cities that they live with, but they have been able to work around that to find solutions that work for themselves and work for the city.
And welcome. First question. We see that social entrepreneurs often play the role where governments fail. Do the government have to fail for social entrepreneurs to make their way? Or can social entrepreneurs simply do things that governments can't? Sure. We often see that social entrepreneurs succeed where governments fail. Do the governments have to fail to make room for social entrepreneurs, or can social entrepreneurs simply do things that governments can't do?
So I think it's the right framing, it's the wrong question. Oftentimes we think the choice is either or, but it can be and. The answer can be and. This is an and answer. What I mean by that is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. went to go see President Johnson. He had gotten one civil rights piece of legislation. I keep talking about Dr. King because we have a Hope Center that we built at the King Center about 50 yards from where Dr. King's crypt is, and so we're continuing Dr. King's work from civil rights to civil rights. So I'm wrapped up in his mission a lot. But he was at the White House with President Johnson at 5 p.m. because the president didn't want the media to know he was there. President Johnson told Martin King that he would not be able to do another piece of legislation. And Martin King, he said, you obviously think the president has more power than he really has. So Martin King left, and with my mentor, Ambassador Andrew Young, and Dr. King was laughing. And so Andrew Young said, why are you laughing? We just got handed our head by the President of the United States. He says, no, you didn't hear him. The president said that we believe that he's got more power than he really has. He said, Andy, we got to go give the president more power. So they went out and marched with a purpose, which James and I agree on, out in the southern states, and created an environment where the government would move. That connects to when Andrew Young, 40 years later, was talking to Nelson Mandela as a freedom fighter who just elected as president. Said, what are you going to do for poor people now? And Mandela looked at him and said, what are you going to make me do? And Ambassador Andrew Young said, wait a minute, we're fighting for the poor. We're freedom fighters. He said, no, I'm not the freedom fighter. I'm now the president of the country. I don't have one constituency. I've got hundreds of constituency, and I'm the president of all people. What are you going to make me do? My point is, in both instances, the government didn't move because it was the right thing to do. The government moved because social activists and civil rights leaders and young people made something important and made the politics move. So it's not doing what the government fails at doing. It is helping the government be successful by helping it do the thing that it doesn't have the capacity to do by itself.
I'd like to build on that. So the first time when we went to South Africa and we were just starting the Slum Dwellers Federation there's this hall full of slum dwellers, and one of our leaders from India told them, I just want you to know that when Nelson Mandela comes out of prison, he's not going to give you a house. And the whole crowd got mad, and they were toy-toying, and they were ready to hit us. I said, listen, we got freedom in India since the last 50 years. Our leaders promised us milk and honey, and we got shit. We didn't get houses. So we want you to know that your president, however good he is going to be, will not be able to deliver houses. And that's the reality. So what do you need to do to strengthen his hands to give you a house? And that's when they got it. He said, are you going to go and toy in front of his office? Because even if you toy for the 50 years, you're not going to get a house. So what do you need to do to help him to give you a house? And I think that's the answer. How do you awaken this consciousness where people feel that it's their right, and how they can help their leadership to actually deliver? So you do your homework and you help them to do their homework.
You want to comment, or should we go on the...
I will make one very fast comment. Social entrepreneurs is a relatively new phenomenon. I mean, we used to have activists, and then we had entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurship is a relatively new phenomenon. I mean, if you go back, it's maybe 25, 30 years, but it came as a wave. And I mean, it just exploded. The dot-com era allowed it to explode. Suddenly people weren't embarrassed about being entrepreneurs. And now there's another wave coming, which is social entrepreneurs. And I think it's a wave that can do things that government simply can't do. It's a wave that can mobilize many other stakeholders. And one of the most important functions, I think, of a social entrepreneur is you need to galvanize all of the stakeholders, because it's about mobilizing the resources that are out there that all want to do good. Everyone wants to have a legacy. You need to engage them and mobilize them. And this is a key role. There's a great mentor of mine by the name of D. Hawk. If you don't know his work, I would encourage you by all means to go and find out about D. Hawk. He's the fellow who founded Visa. And he said to me at one point, you need to make change on scale. There are many wonderful initiatives. The problem is they don't change the world because they're not able to scale. You need to make a change at scale. And in order to do that, you have to have all relevant and affected parties, none more dominant than any other, engaged in the activity and the governance. So that's the function of social entrepreneurs.
Thank you. We'll have the first question from the audience. Erika Gonzalez and Martin Balcoil. Make yourself ready.
Hello. My name is Erika Gonzalez. I am from Mexico, and I am in the social movements workshop. First of all, thank you. All three speeches were wonderful. Thank you very much. And I do hope you can meet us at our social movement we'll have this Saturday. My question is for Celine. In your speech, you talk a lot about slums being outside of the city. But for example, for me and what I live in most of Latin America, I consider the cities grow so fast, the slums are forced to be in the city center. So how do you deal with this kind of slum? Do they still stay there, or do you have to find other properties for them? Thank you very much.
I'm sorry if I've given you the impression that the slums are outside the city. The slums are outside the city only in South Africa, where there's a huge divide between the black settlements and the city center. But in most of our cities, slum dwellers and the middle class, like Sao Paulo, Bombay is just the same, like Mexico City, the slums are in the middle of the city. And so when you're negotiating for alternatives, you actually look at the value of what you're going to give government and what you're going to get back in return. So if you're sitting on prime property in the center of the city for the last 30 years, then you bloody well make sure that if you're moving and giving the government back the land, that you get the value of that land in a place that's useful to you and the community. And for that, you need to do your homework. You need to know what lands are available in the city. You need to know how large your community is. You need to know what kind of options you can negotiate for and not negotiate for. And you need to know what is that limit you can test, because if you ask for something that's impossible, you're never going to get it. So I feel the leadership, if you're mature and evolved, they are able to do this.
Yeah. Then it's Martin Balcoil and B.H. Leonard. Make ready.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm Martin Balcoil from South Africa. I'm under the workshop number 16, Power. My question is directed to James, and thanks for the wonderful presentation from all speakers. So my question is like, when you say it's unfair for China to trade with Africa, where they are given mineral rights for 20 years. To me, it reminds me of some Western leaders who are saying that China is trying to colonize Africa. So I'm not sure that's a question or a statement, because when you can travel through Africa, you can see quite a lot of infrastructures, railway, medical centers, universities, and hospitals, which are built for by the Chinese government. And with the recent infrastructures that they've built the African Union headquarters in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, for free. And in most countries where they're trying to invest, maybe in an energy sector or oil, they're still on an exploration phase. They've not yet made production or profit out of it. But already they're heavily investing on infrastructure, on hospitals, on rail, but they've not yet made profit. So to me, it's kind of like, I'm not sure what to say, but I'm trying to ask myself questions regarding your statement when you say it's unfair, because what they are doing, they've just been in Africa for less than 20 years, but what they've done is times 20 what the West did not do in over 400 or 500 years of occupation and colonization of Africa. So I need you to give me more full details on that. Why do you say it's unfair for Africa to trade with its resources? Because it's what we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question. When I'm talking about unfair, it's because there's not fair market access. If China is, and I'm using China, but it's not only China, and as you mentioned, the British colonized much of Africa, and I mean, they took assets and commodities and gold at great lengths, and again, on very unfair terms. When China's going down, at least they are putting something back in. But because there is such a need, and this comes back to my question about, or my comment about need and capacity existing in abundance, Chinese can bring and deliver a railway, and it might cost them $1 million to put in that railway. But because there's such a need for that railway, there's a willingness, and there aren't any others offering to do it, so there's not a free market, and therefore the pricing and the terms that are negotiated are very one-sided. And that's what I mean by unfair. So for $1 million railway, they're getting mineral rights that might have a value of 50 million. And that's where the unfairness comes in, because there's not an open market for that exchange.
I commend you for the question and for your passion. I think James was being politically correct and kind in his response. Let me tell you what I believe more bluntly. First of all, I want China to succeed. Let me make that very clear. China has to succeed in order for the poor and underserved in her country to come up. That said, China is pimping Africa. And the only thing that's really wrong about this is before China pimped Africa, European powers pimped Africa, and before European powers pimped Africa, Arab powers pimped Africa, and Indian powers pimped Africa. And by the way, before anybody gets on the high horse, the original slave traders were African slave traders. So unfortunately, everybody has taken advantage of Africa. The example that I unfortunately will give is, I'm going to give you a U.S. analogy. I think the financial literacy or the lack thereof is a big problem here. I think this is a new civil rights issue for a generation, understanding the language of money. In the US, we have these inner cities, and we'll have a liquor store next to a payday loan lender, next to a rent-to-own store, next to a renting rim store, you know, renting rims, 20-inch rims with spinners, anyway, next to a liquor store. They're all feeding on poverty. I defined poverty earlier, and that's not racism. It's not discrimination. It's target marketing. They're targeting a low credit score customer, what's called a 500, if you're familiar with American credit scores. A 500 credit score is somebody who's financially illiterate. So they are taking advantage of somebody who has low financial IQ, low levels of self-esteem, low levels of hope. And we are moving in Operation Hope credit scores from 500 or 550 to 670 and 700. When you have a 700 credit score neighborhood, they make better decisions. They just make different decisions. A liquor store turns into a convenience store. A check casher turns into a bank. Now, that's on a microcosm level. You take that same example and move it to Africa, where heads of state, some of them, are less than transparent and won't leave their job. You don't know where the money is going. You have massive levels of financial illiteracy. And you have unfair negotiations. And you don't know what was given up for that hospital. You don't know what was given up for that road. The people certainly don't know the terms of the negotiation. I would bet my net worth that there is not a country in Africa where the people actually got a document and said, you know, this road cost us X dollars, and it was paid in X, Y, and there's the treasury bill, and here's the accounting for it. It just doesn't happen that way. So I mean, Africa is the richest untapped reservoir of natural resources in the world. And China is a low-cost producer of products in the world. And what China needs to do, they believe, is to lock in low-cost minerals. Here's a factoid for you. #1 group of foreign nationals marrying African women in 54 African countries. Chinese. I mean, we're going to have brothers of every color here in a minute. But all of this is capitalism. All of this is folks locking in long-term. I mean, get this. So now, when you don't like the terms of your contract 10 years later, you're not getting mad with some far-off business owner. You're getting married with your cousin Boo-Boo. And so they're making it a family affair. So I want you to push back to James, but push back even further when you go back to Africa and you talk to your own leaders. Every good marriage is made of constructive friction. They should be accountable. They have to answer questions, and I don't want Africa to be pimped.
Next question, B.H. Leonard and Alina Stan. Make yourself ready.
Okay, good evening. My name is Leonard. I'm from Bangalore, India. And my question goes to Celine. While we appreciate the fact that a lot of work has gone to develop the basic, to give the basic needs of the slum dwellers, how do we make them accountable to the laws of the land? Because we must also acknowledge the fact that they are there illegally. And at the same time, there are a lot of criminal elements which are being fostered in these slums. Often, activism becomes very militant, and sometimes the poor demand more rights than the others. And sometimes, maybe tax-paying good citizens, perfectly good citizens, are held hostage by these militant activist voices. So how do you make them accountable to the laws of the land, is my question.
I think you're pressing a button here, so I have to calm down and breathe. You know, what is a good citizen, and you know, who's a law-making citizen and who's not, is a million-dollar question. And I really feel you need to go back to your city and understand your city better and understand where the crime is. It's among the elite, it's among the middle class, and it is among the poor people. I'm not saying the communities living in the slums are saints. There's crime at all levels in society. And all poor people living in the slums are not criminals. And I think only if you go and you have a look at that and you're able to understand that better, you will not make the statement again. So I would urge you to get to understand the slums in Bangalore better.
Andrew Kazib, sorry for if I expressed his names wrong. Andrew? Oh yeah, you were ready. Sorry. Then we first take Alina.
Yes. Hello, my name is Alina
Stan.
And I learned one thing in Norway, that people care about the people around them, which I don't. And I was thinking that back in my... And I was thinking that I'm not selfish. I just think that back in my country, I pay taxes, so I think that the government is responsible for the people who need my help, for the environment that I should take care of. So my question is, how can social entrepreneurship diminish the government's role in the societies and increase the role, involvement, and responsibility of the individual in the society? Thank you.
Sorry, could you repeat the country? Or
Romania.
Romania.
Yes.
Did you get the question?
I basically already answered the question in my way. Sorry? I basically already answered the question in my way. So,
John kind of answered the question earlier. I'm not sure I got it. No, you could repeat the question.
Okay, so how can social entrepreneurship diminish the government's role in the society and increase the role of the individual in the society? I mean, I think people give money to the government and they expect the government to do more for the environment and for the people who need the support. But we are not involved, each of us, more. So I think that the government's responsibility should be decreased. I mean, the government's involvement should be decreased. Do you agree?
I agree with that principle that the government role should be decreased. And one way of achieving that is to strive towards lower taxation and have the money left in the hands of the entrepreneurs because they are always more productive with it. And the social entrepreneur, I think this still comes back to cooperation and engagement of stakeholders. The government is a stakeholder, and they are a logical stakeholder, but they're certainly not a lead stakeholder. And I believe the resources can be used much more efficiently by private sector stakeholders. And so the social entrepreneur should be trying to engage those stakeholders and trying to create a case for why more money should be put into their initiatives as opposed to government taking leadership in doing it.
So I love being on a program with James because I disagree. I mean, if we all agreed, it'd be a boring program. And James has a high enough self-esteem, so he doesn't, I guess, mind that I disagree. I disagree strongly. Look, I'm a capitalist. I'm all for free enterprise, so let me just tell you where I'm coming from again. And I put $20 million a year into Operation Hope, and so just which is a social, entrepreneurship organization. So that's where I'm coming from. That said, there are things that an entrepreneur should not be doing. We have privatized prisons in America, and when you privatize a prison, then think about what the profit motive is for a business. It is to make money, which means you lower your costs, which means the prisoner gets, I think, less services tied to their revitalization and re-entry into society. So you skimp on the guards, you skimp on the intervention, you skimp on everything, and you lock up more people because you make more money per head. It's a profit motive. I don't think that private enterprise should be in the prison business. I don't think that private enterprise should run subways, as an example. New York City, captain of free enterprise, would shut down if it wasn't for subways and the public transportation, which is provided by government. So I think that, you know, we all need government. What we need is not a corrupt government, you know. Romania's had an interesting past. I know it's past. So I don't think that's like the model for government that we want to talk about. But you know, we need responsible governments. I have idiots in my government. But if you take a credit card and you swipe it at a strip club and you're a congressman, you will be in jail in 30 days. So there are some things that we do well, and there's some things we don't do well. I think that it's always a delicate balance, but I think there is a very important role for government to play. I don't want to diminish that. I think that, yes, and to the other answer, to the other part of your question, I said I've already answered that. Basically, the stories I gave earlier, I'm suggesting it should be a very strong role for social entrepreneurs and nonprofits, but I'm just saying very, very strongly that I've come to the conclusion there are some places that private enterprise and social entrepreneurs should not be. This should be the government's role, the public trust in public good.
Would there still be wars in the world if there were no governments at all? If there were no governments at all in the world, would there still be war?
Yes! Yes! Yes!
So I just wanted to interject quickly and say I adamantly disagree. I mean, look, here, if you put the responsibility for prison into the hands of social entrepreneurs, the kind of innovation I would expect is, first of all, the U.S. has an enormous number of prisons. Everyone goes to jail. Now, the solution
I was there last week.
The solution is not building more jails, it's rehabilitating the people. And that's the kind of social innovation that I think comes from social entrepreneurs, not government. I can't imagine government doing the job that Celine's doing in building and creating slums that are more wholesome and better and improve the lives of the people who are dwelling there. I just don't think that government can do it as effectively as social entrepreneurs.
Let me just say this. I mean, again, let me make this crystal clear. I just don't like throwing anybody under a bus. It offends me, really. I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just saying I don't like anybody doing it. Look, 20% of government are bums. 20% of private enterprise are bums. 20% of nonprofit and social entrepreneurs are bums. 20% of people in my family are bums. You got bums in your family. Everybody kind of cousin, boo-boo, you are ashamed of. You got an uncle you don't want your kids around. Look, there are bums everywhere, and let me just say, my government's got a lot of we do a lot of things wrong, but all the great people I meet in my government who really get up every day, who are dedicated to public service, they do the best they can. I mean, all the great stuff that they do, they don't get any credit for it. But they screw up one time, and they're on the front page of the newspaper being called an incompetent nutcase. They make no money, get no benefits, no upside, and I think they're doing God's work. We should just say thank you and commend those who do well and just try to continue to find best practices. But this scapegoating thing, I just tell you, I'm not for that. If that's a conversation, I'll just leave the stage, let y'all have it.
We're starting a debate, but I don't think I was scapegoating government. The question was, is there a role for social entrepreneurship to be increased and government's role in those kinds of functions that social entrepreneurs can do to be decreased? And I'm saying that that is the right equation.
Yes.
We move on to the next question from Andrew. And Yuna Wang, make yourself ready for your question. Yuna Wang.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Kazue Andrew, and I belong to Workshop 11. That is, wow, that's Traders Aid. I am from Uganda, and when the first speaker mentioned that nobody wants Ugandan shillings, I looked around and said, oh, these guys don't want Uganda shillings. I want Uganda shillings. Yeah, anyways, my question is a short one. I think that young people are full of ideas, and I believe that in this room, we've got many more ideas than the people around here. But one of the biggest challenges we face is negative energy. And my question is simple. All the three speakers have led very successful social innovations. Can you give us some practical tips on how to deal with negative energy? How do you deal with rejection? How do you deal with uncooperative people? How do you deal with people who believe that your dream is not worth anything? How do you push it forward? How do you become more persuasive to have your innovation pushed forward? Thank you.
When we started, like I told you with the pavement dwellers, the answer was no. We sat outside every government office for 2 or 3 hours even to get an appointment. And it's only persisting, and like I said, you have to just keep walking that path, and you have to keep doing what you have to do, and you have to do it. There are no shortcuts. And we would actually tell the communities that it is like having bitter medicine. There is no quick shot for any of these solutions. And it's only when you keep repeating and repeating what you're supposed to do that the government also gets completely fed up, because they see you at their door so many times that they're like, okay, please sit, have a cup of tea, now what can we do for you? And once you're able to set a precedent once, then the rest of the communities can just continue to walk that same path, and it just multiplies. So it's actually not very difficult, it's not complex, it's not magical. It's creating that critical mass of people who build their capacity and who are able to consistently and with rigor continue with that stamina to walk that path. You just need that patience and stamina, and like our friend said, you don't have to be lazy.
I think John is the anchor on this one, but I will make a couple quick comments. I think first it starts with you believing. You have to believe in what you're doing, and it doesn't matter what people say. You have a belief in something, that you have a vision that you believe in. There will always be naysayers, there will always be pessimists, and there will always be skeptics. But you need to just continue to drive forward on a sustained effort, and you will slowly build supporters. And every obstacle that you encounter, you just need to be creative. This is where innovation comes in, and you find, okay, there's another hurdle. Do I jump over that one? Do I dig a hole under it? Do I run around it? Do I get someone to toss me over it? And you just find a way, and you find it through your relationships, you find it through, you just ask everybody, I need to find a way, I need to get a path to that person because I know he can make a difference. You will find the path. You have to believe and be persistent.
I can't do this quickly, so I'm not going to do it at all. I'm going to say to my friend, if you want me to come back and do a 2 or 3 hour session just on this topic, I think it's a brilliant question. I think, frankly, you need to be on the stage talking. You did a great job articulating this. If you want me to come back and do a 2 or 3 hour session just on this topic, I'll be glad to do it. I'll just give you a couple quotes because I can't, again, do this easily. I'm going to give you a couple quotes to just hold on to. Quote number 1, my pastor, Reverend Murray, told me, it's not what people call you, it's what you answer to that's important. And never, ever, ever answer out of your name. And then I added, to argue with a fool proves there are two. Quote number 2, Quincy Jones said, not 1 ounce of my self-worth depends on your acceptance of me. This is mine. If I don't like me, I can't like you. If I don't feel good about me, I'm not going to feel good about you. If I don't respect me, I don't have a clue how to respect you. If I don't love me, I don't have the capacity to love you. And here's a big one. If I don't have a purpose in my life, I'm going to make your life a living hell. So when you see a negative person, just run.
We have one last question afterwards. When you answer the last question from Yuna, you will get the chance to have some final words, a minute each, and I think we'll go in the opposite direction as the introduction. So we'll start with Celine and John, and then James. Yuna.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Yuna Wang. I come from China and also Workshop 11. I think why our young generation is so excited about this question, this topic, because we don't want to buy the old paradigm of firstly successfully in commercial world and then go into the social sector. We want to do both. We want to do well and we also want to do good. So here comes to my practical question is that what do you think is the better route to develop the social entrepreneurship? Because I think this is kind of value transformation, value introduced. It's not easy to change people's mindset sometimes. So Mr. Bryant, I know you do many things like global dignity. So do you have any difficulty when there is a gap between the faster talk and the real reaction? I mean that people discuss about a topic, about value, but there's no action or not enough action enough after following this kind of discussion. And how to deal with this. And during this kind of development, what role do our young generation can do during this development? Thank you.
Thank you. These are really great questions, and there's really no way to answer them substantively quickly. Okay, so we're just doing the best we can. I think afterwards, offline would be more than willing. I know I would be, go to try to respond by email more substantively. I have two quick things to say to your question. Number one, I'm always underwhelmed. I'm most always underwhelmed by the response I have gotten in the world to whatever idea it is that I have tried to bring forth. I tend to think that PhDs are good, but PhDs are better. And here's my reason for hope. So when I say I want to eradicate poverty, change the world, make free enterprise work for the poor, people think I'm like, woo-hoo, and I am a little crazy. But I actually think this is very practical and rational for this reason. The book, The Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell, University of Illinois study, proved that at 5% role models, every community stabilizes. Not 80% role models, not 50%, all that's tough. The cynic would say, you can't do that. 20% role models would be tough. You would know in slums how difficult it is to find a positive role model. 10% role models would be tough. God is so amazing. He makes it so obvious and so achievable. With 5% role models, you can change the world and stabilize anything. Why do kids want to be rap stars, athletes, and drug dealers in inner city neighborhoods? They're not dumb and they're not stupid. They're brilliant. They're modeling what they see. And my job is to give them something different to see. Dr. King, I told you earlier, he had 60 employees. For a whole nation. He only had 30% of the black community support. 70% were against him. But the tipping point, hope is so powerful, is my point. You only need a super minority of it to change the world. And fear is such a punk that you need almost 98% of fear and oppression to crush the human spirit. Look at what's going on in Syria right now. A nation has bombed its own people for 3+ years, and yet husbands and wives come out with their children, put them with school uniforms on, walk them to school with pride and dignity. You got people coming out with little pop guns, shooting at missile launching jets and things. But these people still believe in democracy. They believe in themselves. They believe in that. I mean, yes, it's horrible, and the death is horrible, but the flip side of that, looking through another lens, it's inspiring.
that fear is such a punk that you can't extinguish the human spirit. And hope is so powerful. You need a super minority of it to change the world.
All right, it's... Yeah, sure.
I think that was an outstanding question. The idea of the balance between a social, cause-related pursuit, which, again, everyone wants to leave a legacy. When I was coming in from the airport, the young woman, Ida, who was driving me, she said, I asked her what she was doing. She says, I'm a mechanical, I'm studying to be a mechanical engineer. And I said, oh, great. Well, what kind of job are you going to get? And she says, well, I'll probably end up working for an oil company. And she was kind of, lackadaisical about that idea. And she said, but really, I want to make a difference. And she says, but, I think we might be able to change things in the oil company. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, well, do most of the students that are at your school feel that way about wanting to make a difference? She goes, everyone does. And they're all looking for a way to do it. And so combining the social good with doing well is the right formula. It doesn't work in every situation. Battered, safe houses for battered women is not something that you can really make a highly profitable business. Like you're saying, there is things that are going to be charity. They are charity or they're government. But to pursue something and to explore and identify and find something that has both social satisfaction and all at the same time is commercially viable is everyone's dream. And so I would just like to encourage you to watch what is happening with this movement that is underfoot with Recipco. It introduces a new economic architecture. It's an architecture that anyone can use. You can go back into your community wherever it is. I mean, we were with a fellow yesterday from Mali, and he was talking about the corruption and how sad it is that this aid money comes in, and none of it really goes to where it should. It's all going to layers of corruption along the way. He says, this is the only solution, and he was inspired. You can use the economic architecture of mobilizing capacity, your friend's capacity, your parents' business capacity, any capacity in your community, your region, your country is a new form of credit and money. And if you start thinking about that, that has commercial implications because by mobilizing capacity, everyone wins. And this is why when I started bringing Occupy Wall Street together with Wall Street, they were saying to me, are you sure, both of them independently saying to me, are you sure you want to bring us in the same room? And I was, absolutely. They always nod their head. This is a solution because we win. HP wins. They get to access more capacity, more demand in Africa. African poor communities win because they get to have HP computers and they create new sources of demand from their unused capacity. This model has applications for everybody in this room. And this is about the tipping point. And we are approaching that. And I would, welcome you to become part of the movement and the activist kind of drive behind it. And it has that kind of social and commercial and therefore sustainable implication.
All right, last words. What is... secret note. What is the one thing you want the audience to take with them home from tonight? Start with Celine.
I think for all of us, it's a journey from fear to fearlessness, to be able to unfold all our own insecurities, and in fact, all of us who are in the business of helping other people are helping ourselves tremendously as well, because it's a healing that you're doing for your own soul. So just remember that when you're actually helping other people, it's about yourself more than, you need to do that. You have a commitment to yourself to make sure that you're whole and you're complete, because only when you're whole and you're complete, you can give of yourself to somebody else. If you're sick and, some of our slum leaders say, oh, she comes with a backache and a stomach ache and she's all the time getting a headache. How is she going to help us? So I feel when we when we go to help people, we have to take responsibility that we are whole. The second important message that I have learned over time is that whenever you're making any choice or decision, if it's all about you, it's never going to work. It's going to fall flat on its face. But if it's about other people, it will always be a success. And this, I'm saying it theoretically, but if you really want to experience it, experiment with the idea. Because the more that you make a choice, or the choices that you make that are for other people, and you know, whatever it is, you will see that you will get benefits that are very different from the choices that you make for your own individual gain. I cannot say it very profoundly. I'm sure John can say this better than me, but I'm trying to say that.
John, can you stand behind that?
I think I have nothing to say because I've said enough. I just want to leave you with a message that you have 116 countries here. You each go back as the tipping point. That's it.
It's been a real pleasure, and you know, just find your spirit. Find out what it is that inspires you and what you love and what you're excited about, and just go make it happen.
Thank you. It really has been a pleasure. Thank you for sound and lighting and video, and the whole ISFiT organization for making this meeting happen. Thank you to our speakers, you did great. Thank you to the audience and our people asking questions. You made this meeting. Please move out of the hall quickly, because there's going to be dancing afterwards. And enjoy the rest of your festival. Cool.
Hey, look, I've been joking a lot. This is on the real tip now, but real tip means there's a serious point. 450 people or something like that helped to organize, 500 people helped to organize this conference. It takes a lot of work to make this look simple. This lady here did a lot of work. This lady here did a lot of work. He did a lot of work. There's a lot of people who don't get credit. If you've enjoyed this, please stop and give them some love and just say thank you.